This section of the digestive system chapter is going to look at the organs that make up the digestive system. The organs of the digestive system are separated into two groups, those that food moves through and those that contribute to the function of the other organs. The organs that the food moves through is referred to as the digestive tract or the gastrointestinal tract or the GI tract or sometimes the alimentary canal. It starts at the oral cavity, which isn't really an organ unto itself. The organs in the oral cavity are the tongue and the teeth, etc., etc. But food enters through the oral cavity. It then moves into the pharynx, only the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx, not the nasopharynx. And then down the esophagus to the stomach, and then from the stomach into the small intestine, which has three portions, the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum, and the large intestine, which starts with the cecum, then the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon, ending with the rectum and the anus. The other organs of the digestive system are called accessory digestive organs. They provide digestive juices for the organs that process the food. Connected to the oral cavity are the salivary glands. There are three of them, the parotid gland, the sublingual gland, and the submandibular gland. There, of course, are pairs of those, right and left of each. Then, attached to the small intestine are the pancreas and liver/gallbladder. The pancreas produces most of the enzymes that are used in the small intestine, and the liver makes a digestive juice called bile, which helps to emulsify lipids in the small intestine. I said liver/gallbladder because the gallbladder doesn't make anything. It actually just stores the bile between meals and releases a large volume of it right at the beginning of digesting a meal so that you can emulsify all the lipids in that pizza you just ate or something like that. Also, in considering the digestive organs, it's necessary to think about the tissues that make up the wall of digestive organs. Now, this image is of the small intestine, basically, and it's a representative organ, and it has all of the layers that we're going to describe. The layers are a little different for certain organs, and I'll address that when we get to the particular layers. Working from the inside to the outside of the organ, the first layer that we want to talk about is the mucosa, or mucosal membrane. It's made up of an epithelium and its associated connective tissue, called the lamina propria, as any mucosal membrane would have. And then there's an additional layer of smooth muscle called the Muscularis mucosae. Very thin layer of muscle tissue, but it is there. Now, the epithelium varies depending on where we're looking. The upper digestive tract, anatomically speaking, has a stratified squamous epithelium, which is the esophagus and everything in the head and neck. And then the lower digestive tract has a simple columnar epithelium, which is the stomach and the intestines. The next layer is the submucosa. It's more connective tissue beyond the Muscularis mucosae. Tissue-wise, the submucosa is probably the least interesting layer, but it does have some deep glands in it. There are glands of the mucosa that are limited to just the mucosa, but there are some that extend out of the mucosa into the submucosa, which are indicated here. The next layer is the muscularis, which is a thick layer of smooth muscle, actually two layers of smooth muscle, called the circular muscle, going around the circumference of the tube, and the longitudinal muscle, running the length of the tube. This should not be confused with the muscularis mucosae, which is a different layer. This is just the muscularis. Some sources will refer to it as the muscularis externa to differentiate between the two, but it's just the muscularis. In the stomach, the muscularis has an extra layer of fibers called oblique fibers, and when we get up into the pharynx and the oral cavity, the muscularis is a little hard to define because we stop seeing smooth muscle and we start seeing skeletal muscle and particular muscles in the walls of those regions. The fourth layer, the outermost layer, is called the serosa. It's a serosal membrane. It is a simple squamous epithelium and its associated areolar connective tissue. As with the other serosal membranes we've met in this semester, it covers the outside of the organs and lines the inside of the cavity containing those organs. It's a little different, though, than the pericardium or the pleura. The serosa of the digestive tract only covers the outside of lower digestive tract organs in the abdominopelvic cavity, and the distance distance from the outside of that organ to the inside of that cavity might not be that short, like in the other two serosal membranes. And the extension of the serosa between the organ and the wall of the body cavity is called the mesentery, and it contains arteries and nerves, veins, and, not pictured here, also lymphatic vessels. The serosa of the digestive system is also called the peritoneum, and the abdominopelvic cavity can sometimes be referred to as the peritoneal cavity. And then things not in that cavity, namely the esophagus and everything above, don't have a serosa. The esophagus has loose connective tissue surrounding it, which would be called an adventitia, just a general name for connective tissue surrounding the outside of an organ. The pharynx and the oral cavity, again, are hard to define at this point, just like with the mucosa, because the arrangement of tissues is so different at that point in the head and neck. In talking about the layers of tissue that make up the digestive tract, it's important to mention the nervous tissue that's found there. It's organized into two different regions, the submucosal plexus and the mesenteric plexus. The submucosal plexus is mostly in charge of controlling glands, and the mesenteric plexus is mostly in charge of controlling muscle contractions. Now, this is the enteric nervous system for the most part, but it's also part of the autonomic system. The neurons that are found in these plexuses would be the terminal ganglia of the parasympathetic system, which is most of what this tissue is. However, there's also going to be some postganglionic sympathetic fibers entering through these plexuses, coming from ganglia closer to the spinal cord. That's how it's integrated with the tissue of the digestive system organs. Consider this question. When you feel that you've reached an answer, hit the next button to go into the next slide, which will reveal the correct answer. The esophagus doesn't seem to have a whole lot of really important things to do. It's just a muscular tube that pushes food from the oral cavity down to the abdominal cavity and into the stomach. Now, I am, in saying it that way, actually kind of skipping over the pharynx, but that's essentially all that the esophagus does. All of the other organs have more involved roles in digestion, it seems.